To the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something huge, a concept that shapes the lives of, nearly 2 billion people.
That's right. As of this year, 2025, about 1.9 billion Muslims globally.
And yet, the core ideas we're talking about, Shariah and Fiqh, they're probably some of the most, well, polarized and misunderstood topics out there.
Absolutely. You see the headlines, the social media posts.
Exactly. And often the terms are just thrown around, sometimes interchangeably, sometimes, honestly, weaponized. If that sounds familiar, if you felt confused, then this deep dive, it's your shortcut to getting some real clarity. Our mission today is simple. Cut through the noise. We want to challenge those easy, oversimplified takes you hear everywhere and, uncover the nuances, the stuff that many people, maybe even many Muslims, sometimes miss. And hey, before we jump right in, if you appreciate this kind of deep dives, you should definitely check out Mind Expansion Daily. That's where you'll find more great info just like this. And please, wherever you're listening from, do us a huge favor. Like and subscribe to Mind Expansion Daily. Seriously, hitting that like button, it really helps the algorithm show this to more people, which is crucial for discussions like this one.
It really does make a difference.
Also, if you find this valuable, maybe consider buying us a coffee. There's a link right there in the description. It helps us keep doing this.
We appreciate the support.
And one more thing as we go through this, think about whether you agree or disagree with our final take. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, we genuinely want to hear your thoughts.
Oh, and tell us where you're tuning in from. We love seeing the worldwide reach. Okay, sorry for the asks. Let's get back to it.
Right. So the core issue, as I mentioned, is this confusion. Shariah, Fiqh. They get tangled up. And it's not just, external critics. Our sources, like Pew data from this year, show something pretty striking. Maybe 60% of Muslims themselves feel they don't fully grasp the scope of Shariah. They often equate it just with, say, legal codes or punishment.
60%. Wow, that's significant.
It is, and this blurring fuels so much misunderstanding inside and outside the community. It really complicates any kind of constructive dialogue. We kind of need to untangle that.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this relationship. Foundational definitions first. You called it the divine path versus human interpretation. So, Shariah, what exactly is the path?
Shariah, it literally translates as the path to water. Think of it like the source of life, the ultimate guidance. It's seen as the divine, immutable blueprint. It comes directly and only from the Quran and the Sunnah. That's the Prophet Muhammad's authenticated teachings and practices.
Immutable. Okay, so fixed.
Yeah.
And it covers, well, everything.
Pretty much, yeah. Worship, ethics, how you treat people, social norms. The Quran has verses like 4.59 calling for obedience to God and the messenger. That's Shariah, the unchanging principle.
Okay, divine blueprint, fixed. So then Fiqh, where does that fit into the picture?
Fiqh is, well, it's the human side of understanding that blueprint. It means deep understanding or comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole scholarly process, the methodology, and then the actual rulings that come out of it, the practical, actionable stuff.
Ah, okay. So it's what happens when people try to figure out how those divine principles apply in real life.
Exactly. Guided by principles like justice and fairness, scholars wrestle with the divine texts to see how Shariah works in a specific time, a specific place, a specific situation. It's an intellectual effort.
And this distinction is where things get really critical, right? You mentioned data earlier.
Yeah, the numbers are quite telling. Some sources, again referencing Pew's 2025 findings, suggest around 70% of Muslims might conflate the two. They treat Fiqh, the human interpretation, almost as if it were the divine source itself.
70%. Wait. If that many people within the faith confuse them, doesn't that kind of suggest Fiqh itself, like the system of interpretation, maybe hasn't done a great job explaining its own role, its own adaptability?
That's a really sharp question. And yeah, there are complex reasons for that, historical shifts, how legal education works today, but understanding the core difference is still the absolute key. Because Shariah, it's universal, non-negotiable principles. Take zakat, the mandatory charity, usually 2.5% on wealth. That's a pillar of Islam, required everywhere. That's pure Shariah.
Universal mandate.
But Fiqh, that's where the variety comes in. It's why we have different schools of thought, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, and others. They all agree you must pray. That's Shariah. But Fiqh is why they might differ, sometimes significantly, on, say, the exact timings for prayer or how you should stand or hold your hands.
I see. So Fiqh gives the how-to within the must-do.
Precisely. It provides the necessary flexibility within that fixed framework.
Okay. That idea of fixed principle, flexible application, that feels crucial because it helps us tackle those stereotypes head on, right? You mentioned Shariah, and for so many people, the image is just Punishment.
Yeah, that punitive image is, frankly, massively distorted. When you actually look at the text, it's almost counterintuitive compared to the news cycle. Our analysis shows only about, get this, 5% of verses in the Quran actually deal with legal penalties or punishments. 5%.
Only 5, seriously.
Seriously, the vast majority. It's about worship, ethics, business dealings, morality, family life.
But the media focus, it flips that completely. You cited an Al Jazeera analysis from 2025. 40% of news mentions about Islamic law focus specifically on hudud, those maximum penalties.
Exactly. 40% focus on 5% of the material. It creates this totally skewed picture, making people think the whole system is maybe 95% about punishment.
When the source says it's 5%, that's sobering.
Yeah.
That level of misunderstanding being so widespread.
It is, and it completely overshadows what Shariah emphasizes at its core, which is mercy. The Quran itself says the Prophet was sent as a mercy to the world, that principle of mercy. It deeply informs fiqh. It leads scholars to set incredibly high standards for evidence, for proof.
Making those penalties very hard to actually apply.
Often, yes. Making them virtually impossible to enact in many cases because mercy has to be prioritized over punishment according to the principles themselves.
So fiqh is designed to be flexible, merciful, which is the opposite of how many see it. You mentioned a stat, 65% of non-Muslims think Islamic law is just static and changing.
Right. And that's just fundamentally wrong. Fiqh has to adapt. It's the whole point. It's how the faith stays relevant across time and cultures. We see this constantly, even with modern legal rulings called fatwas. Think about organ donation.
Okay, yeah. How does that work?
Well, fiqh scholars had to weigh ancient texts about respecting the body, even after death, against the modern medical reality and the Shariah principle of preserving life. They used fiqh methodology to determine that saving a life, a core goal of Shariah, could take precedence. That allowed for fatwas permitting organ donation. That's fiqh adapting.
And this isn't new, this need for interpretation. Shariah's core revelation finished around 632 CE. But the main fiqh schools, the organized systems of interpretation, they took time to develop. They didn't really solidify until around 900 CE.
Exactly. That gap of almost 300 years shows interpretation was always part of the process. It wasn't an afterthought. Take the ban on usury riba. It's clearly stated in the Quran. That's Shariah.
All right, 2.275.
Yes. But how do you apply that ban to complex financial products today? Or even historically? That's fiqh. You'll find Hanafi scholars, for example, might permit certain types of profit-sharing arrangements or loans seen as necessary, while Shafi'i scholars might interpret the ban much more strictly.
Same principle, different application based on reasoning.
Precisely. The Shariah principle is fixed. Fiqh provides the adaptable economic mechanism.
Which leads us right into our third point, this dynamic dance, how it all stays relevant today. It's not just about following rules, it's about making the core principles work in the here and now.
Absolutely. Shariah sets that broad, unwavering moral compass. Seek justice, establish mercy, promote human well-being. Fiqh is like the ongoing, practical choreography scholars perform to make those principles real in constantly shifting societies. With new technologies, new economic realities, the spirit guides the letter.
Let's revisit zakat as an example. Shariah says, mandatory charity, fixed, but
Fiqh is the how. How do you calculate it? Is it on your savings, your business inventory, your crops? Different fiqh schools have different detailed methods. One might focus on cash wealth, another more on agricultural output or trade goods.
then people value that flexibility, right? I think you mentioned to study.
Yeah, showing something like 80% of Muslims really appreciate that fiqh allows the mandatory principles to be adapted to their specific economic lives. Someone on X even posted something like, fiqh makes faith practical. Makes sense.
It does.
And fiqh is absolutely engaging with 2025's biggest challenges. Think AI ethics, climate change. We're seeing specific fatwas now that, for instance, allow calculating zakat based on investments in solar energy projects, redirecting that obligatory charity towards environmental goals.
Wow. So using a traditional pillar to tackle a modern crisis.
Exactly. Fiqh ensures that core duty, charity, stays relevant and impactful, even in debates about global energy policy.
That adaptability is so important, especially when you consider the challenge Pew highlighted. Around 30% of young Muslims feeling Shariah seems outdated.
Right.
But if fiqh is already grappling with AI, with crypto, with solar panels, maybe the issue isn't the system, but how its dynamism is communicated.
I think that's a huge part of it. Better education is key. showing that the divine path isn't stuck in the 7th century because the tools for understanding and applying it fiqh are inherently adaptive.
When people get that nuance.
The whole "it's rigid and unchanging" idea just dissolves. You start to appreciate the continuous intellectual work involved in keeping divine principles alive and relevant.
And understanding this difference, it doesn't just help individuals. It actually helps build bridges, right? Build community.
It really does. Once you move past seeing Shariah as this single monolithic legal code, dialogue opens up. Our sources suggest around 70% of successful interfaith programs actually credit the diversity within fiqh, showcasing the range of scholarly opinions as a key factor.
How so?
Because when people see there's internal debate, flexibility, different valid viewpoints within Islamic thought, they approach it with curiosity, not just fear of a perceived single harsh law. It fosters empathy. Like another expo said, learned fiqh, now I get Islam better.
Okay, so let's bring this all together for you, the listener.
Yeah.
What's the main takeaway from this deep dive? I think it's clear. Shariah and fiqh, not the same thing. They're two halves of a dynamic whole.
Exactly. Shariah is the divine standard fixed, universal, the ultimate why. Fiqh is the human journey to understand and apply that standard, flexible, context-dependent, the practical how.
And embracing that complexity, that interplay, seems absolutely vital, both for, fostering a living faith identity and for engaging constructively with the modern world we all share.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe a challenge for you to consider. We talked about that 30% of youth who feel Shariah might be outdated. So, here's the question. If fiqh is demonstrably adapting timeless principles to things like AI, crypto, climate change, what really needs to change structurally in education or communication globally to truly convince everyone that the spirit of Shariah is not just historical, but genuinely equipped for modern life?
That's a powerful question to leave folks with. How do we bridge that perception gap? Thank you for exploring that with us. And remember, if you value this kind of clarity, please visit Mind Expansion Daily for more. Don't forget to like this deep dive seriously. Helps us reach more people, and subscribe. And if you can, that Buy Us a Cafe link is in the description.
We'd also love to see your comments. Agree, disagree, your perspective matters.
Yes. And tell us where you're listening from. We're aiming for global reach. Thanks for tuning in.